this stage as they explore the invisible force that make more motion possible.
When we are walking, you can see we have tiny grooves in our shoes to help us grip the ground. And one of the good examples for this is vehicles. When you push the brakes of the vehicle, friction is what stops the vehicle. Without friction, life is just a man on an ice lake. So now you might wonder, why does friction happen? Well, you see, in every object there are tiny grooves that attaches them. In every object like glass and metal, they get together creating a bond. When you try to push it, that bond makes it impossible to move, creating friction. Now I admit, friction is helpful and harmful at the same time. For being helpful, we can take lighting a match, where the motion creates friction that make a temperature difference that light that match. When riding, as I told you earlier, when walking and balancing on stuff, because friction helps us to grip the ground. For being friction a problem, we can relate to this one thing. Friction makes things not lasted for a long time. We can see that in engines where friction makes things break down easily. That's why we use lubricants to reduce friction and to long last engines and gears. Now I would like to invite Nathindu to talk about static frictional force.
Okay. There are mainly three types of frictional forces that are existing in the world. They are static frictional force, limiting frictional force, and the dynamic frictional force. So let us begin our presentation with the static frictional force. So what is known as the static frictional force? Static frictional force is the frictional force that acts when there is no relative motion even though force is applied on the body. This is what is simply called as the static frictional force. So we can identify static frictional force by the following example. So now I am going to give a little bit force to this chair. But you see, there is no motion occurred in this chair. Why it is that? Because the force that I apply to this chair is unbalanced to the friction that is exerted from this chair. Because of that, there is no force. Because of that, there is no motion occurred in this chair. This is what is simply called as the static frictional force. So now I would like to invite Sidney to tell you more about the limiting frictional force.
Ever try to push a chair? First, it doesn't move, but suddenly it starts sliding. That magic moment is because of limiting frictional force. But what is limiting frictional force? I'll tell you. Limiting frictional force is the maximum static frictional force that can act between two surfaces just before a motion begins. So now let's see some characteristics of limiting frictional force. Limited frictional force has the highest value of static friction. It occurs when an object is just about to start moving. It acts opposite to the applied force and it is the strongest grip between two surfaces. Limited frictional force is everywhere. So now let's talk about some day-to-day examples for limited frictional force. Pushing an object before it moves, walking without slippers, bicycle tires to between the road, and tires of a car just before cycling. If you can remember, in the very beginning, I asked you, what does it happen when we try to push a chair? So now I'll tell you that in detail. If we apply small force to push this chair, the chair stays still. When the force that we apply increases, the friction also increases. However, the friction can increase up to a certain value. So when the force that we apply to push a chair is the maximum value, the chair starts to move. So the next time, if you can't push your school table, don't blame yourself. Just say, it's not me, it's limited frictional force. So now I invite Sonali to explain you about dynamic frictional force.
So we learned about static friction cable to the start and limiting friction at the beginning. But what happens once the objects are actually sliding? That's when dynamic friction comes out. Dynamic friction is the friction experienced by a body when in motion. This frictional force force that sets no motion. And it always shows up when things are actually sliding. No movement, no dynamic. Here's the crazy twist. This frictional force is usually bigger than static friction. Ever tried pushing a heavy desk? The hardest part is getting it started. Once it's moving, it glides much easier. Static friction is like a tough bouncer and a tough girl who won't let you do. Dynamic friction is like a chill bartender, just making sure you won't get too wild. For example, I'll show you something. When I push this chair across the floor, the friction between the chair and the floor tries to stop the chair. That frictional force is known as dynamic friction. If dynamic friction was not there, the chair would just slide and slide like on ice. Like when we ice skate, when we push an object, even when a car skids on the road, and even when we write on a paper with a pencil. So, those are the three types of frictional forces that can be seen in our environment.
So, ladies and gentlemen, today we have a fight between static friction versus dynamic friction.
I'm the strongest. I stop things before they even start to move. Try pushing a table. You will feel me holding tight.
Once things start moving, I take over. I slow them down. Without me, we will fight forever.
But without me, nothing would even stay still.
Without me, cars would never stop.
Enough, enough, enough. Both of you are very important. Together you make nature friction.
Who put soap on the floor? Huh? Do you want me to be next Michael Jackson? Do you moonwalk like this? This is what happened when friction takes a vacation. Smooth slippery things reduce the friction and rough bumpy things increase it. And that's what, my friends, we call factors affecting friction. So let's see the factors affecting friction. So there are two factors affecting friction: nature of the contact surfaces and the normal force. Now I'm going to tell you about the nature of the contact surfaces. So what does nature of contact surfaces mean? It means the type or the condition of the surface where friction occurs. So in simple words, whether the surfaces are rough or smooth. So accordingly, if the surfaces are rough, friction will be high, and if the surfaces are smooth, friction will be low. So according to the nature of contact surfaces, there are four possible cases: smooth object on a smooth surface, smooth object on a rough surface, rough object on a smooth surface, and rough object on a rough surface. So according to these cases, friction change. So let's see them one by one. So the first case, smooth object on a smooth surface. So let's give it a small. You see, it moves. So how is the friction here? The friction here is very low. That's why it goes very fast. So why is the friction is low? Because the both surfaces are smooth, the friction in here is low. So now let's go to the second case. Smooth object on a rough surface. Now let's give it a small push. It doesn't move. And now let's increase the force and give it a moderate push. It's somewhat hard to move, but still I can manage. So how is the friction here? The friction here is moderate. But why? Let's see. So here the one surface is rough, so the friction is high. Now let's go to the third case. Rough object on a smooth surface. So let's give it a push. It also like the second one, it's somewhat hard, but it still can manage. So here also, because of the roughness of one surface, the friction is moderate. Okay, now let's see the final case. Rough object on a rough surface. Now let's give it a push. friction here is very high. Why? Because the both surfaces are rough, the friction in this case is very high. But hey, don't laugh like that, okay? I still managed to move it. Now you may wonder, does surface area change the friction? Let's test it. Let's give a push in the wider side and in narrow side. In all these cases, the friction is same. Why? Because friction does not depend on the surface area. So this is all about the first factor affecting friction. And now I invite Karindi to talk about the second factor affecting friction.
You may wonder, what is normal force? Normal force is a type of a contact force. Its main job is to balance an object which is resting on a surface. So, this normal force has a strong link with friction. Actually, this friction depends on normal force. Try pushing a heavy box. Pushing a heavy box is harder than pushing a light one because the weight is high and the friction is strong. So, let's see it by practice. So here, I'm going to give a push. It's easy because it has a less weight and at this moment, the weight is acting downwards while the normal force is acting upwards with the equal force. So let me add one more block. So it's somewhat hard to push. That's because when I added the one block more, the weight is increased and also the friction is increased. So we can see this normal force in many day-to-day situations. For example, take a book on a table. At that moment, the weight is acting downwards while the normal force is acting upwards. The same thing applies when you are even standing on the ground or also when a car is parked on the road. This force is really important for us because this keeps objects balanced, and if this normal force didn't exist, we would just like root surfaces. So this is all about the second factor which affects friction, and now I invite Himasha to talk about reducing friction.
What if I told you secret to faster cars, long-lasting machines, and even space travel lies in one visible force called friction? Why do some engines roar with power while some grind to a halt? What makes a bullet glide? A train race or a robot move with precision? This isn't just about the design, it's how we reduce friction. So today, I'm going to challenge ordinary and reveal the extraordinary methods which turn resistance into speed and science into magic. So, are you ready to discover how we turn friction? But before that, we need to know why we need to reduce friction. First one is friction in aerospace. Here, friction influences fuel efficiency and heat. So this may affect rocket's performance and the safety. Second one is friction in sports. When we talk about friction occurring in sports, it influences the speed, performance and lifespan of equipment and the safety. So mainly this affects the athlete outcome. And the third one is friction in manufacturing. Here it needs wear, tear and maintenance cost. So eventually, when we reduce friction, we can also reduce operational cost. And the last one is benefits of friction reduction. In our day-to-day life, we can have long-lasting equipment, high efficiency, and best performance in our activities. So with all these, how can we reduce friction? First one is lubrication techniques. By using oil, greases, and advanced nano-lubricant, we can make the rough surface more smooth. So the friction reduces. body. We can use Teflon, ceramic and diamond-like carbon to make a smooth surface. So there also we can reduce friction. Third one is streamline design. By making aerodynamic or hydrodynamic design, we can challenge the resistance of air and water. So in that also we can reduce friction. And the last one, but not least, rolling elements and magnetic leviation. By using ball bearings, rollers and magnetic leviation, we can replace sliding with rollers and continuous motions. So with that, we can have low friction. So you have learned many things about friction. So with that, sometimes friction affects our life advantageously, but sometimes it may also cause harmful effects on our life.
Wow, friction is everywhere. I never knew it could be so pretty.
Yeah, from static to dynamic to and even reducing.
I never thought that I should teach a class on friction now.
Bravo, my friends. You have learned the secrets of friction. But alas, duty calls.
Wait, where are you going?
Mona Lisa is waiting. She is impatient. She is even sent the cat to send me if I'm late. So I want to go now. It's a little bit, but no matters. My vision continues.
Even a genius like Leonardo can't escape friction.
Friction may slow things down, but it makes life interesting and make Leonardo run to Mona Lisa.
Connected.
It works in life both night and day. Stay, slay, 1, 2. Friction's now helps me and you. Friction's the force that slows things down. It fights the motion all around. Surfaces rough will grip and stay. That's why objects don't slip away. Friction's here, it shows the way. It works in life both night and day. Static, sliding, rolling too. Friction's now helps me and you. Friction now helps me and you. Static keeps an object still. It blocks the push with all its will. But push too hard beyond the line. Limiting friction says, now it's time. Friction's here, it shows the way. It works in life both night and day. Sliding, rolling too. Friction's now helps me and you. Friction now helps me and you. Dynamic comes when things now slide. It slows them down from the moving side.